First, what we're going to do is just kind of show you a little bit of the film series that we created at the Human Longevity Project. And I think I've spoken with a few people in the room that have seen this 9-part documentary film series. And what it is a film series traveling around the world looking at longevity through the lens of the people in the blue zones, right? We just kind of went to these areas around the world where people are living to 100 at vastly higher rates than what we see anywhere else. And the only reason we chose those places is because we knew we could find people there. So we were not studying the areas per se, but rather the people and their lifestyles. So it's a 12-hour, epic docu-series that we've cut down to about 35 minutes for you. So we've kind of compiled it in a digestible way that hopefully delivers at least the essence of the project and the film series. So we'll watch that for a little bit, and then we will get started with a talk. Hope you enjoy it.
We don't need to go into ancient history to think about the changes that really matter for us. So if we just go back to the early 1900s, this was the beginning of the electric light bulb. And prior to that, we didn't really see shift work. And then we move forward a little bit more, and we see the development of antibiotics, which changed the world and has saved millions of lives, billions of lives potentially. Then we have the industrialization of our food supply, whereas not that long ago, the bulk of the food that we ate was raised fairly locally. It was consumed rather locally. We had a seasonal variation to it. We didn't always have oranges and watermelons around and stuff like that, in the dead of winter. If we go back just a little bit, when I was born, this was pre-information age. So people watched TV. There were 3 channels when you got up and turned on the TV. And then with the development of the information age, we've seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of physical activity that people do. And then now in the modern information age, we can work from home, order our food to our front door, never go outside, go online and tell our doctor that we have a sore throat and get antibiotics delivered to the front door. We could construct a life where we literally never have any meaningful social interaction. We try to paper over that with social media. And so in a very brief period of time, really in the period of one very long lifetime, or certainly 2 generations, longer lifetimes, we've seen every facet of our lives change in really profound ways, and in a larger way than happened in the totality of the rest of history.
The epidemic of chronic illness has not yet spread to developing nations. It is really a problem in modern industrialized world. So the question is, why are autism, ADHD, asthma, autoimmune diseases, allergies, why are these so endemic in modern industrialized world? And the reason why is because we live differently.
What's happened in the last 40, 50, 60 years? Is there anything that's changed that may contribute to the end point result where we're getting sicker, quicker?
Now it's official. The experts in epidemiology have confirmed that in the last few years, life expectancy is not growing anymore, it's regressive. And insiders say it's actually regressive since 1997, but the official numbers is now in the last 2 years, it's going downhill rapidly.
We have more scientists, more doctors, more therapists, more gyms, more chiropractors, more osteopaths, and more nutritionists per capita than we've ever had, and we're the sickest people we've ever been.
We have a crisis coming that needs to be acknowledged.
If you look in the index of medical textbook that a medical student would see in their program, and you look for health in the index of that textbook, you're not going to find anything. There's no definition of health in most medical textbooks. The primary focus is on disease.
We treat the body as if it's a bunch of different parts, and we go to the doctor for that part. We have a headache, we go to the head doctor. The problem is our headache might be caused by what we're eating, or by our gut flora, or by a nutritional deficiency, or by a toxin, and we don't have a way of mapping that because the way that the science is shifting so fast, we haven't caught up clinically.
Up until really very recently, people had every reason in the world to think that health and disease were a matter either of bad luck, punishment from God, or more recently, the unfortunate scripting in our genetics of just a bad health hand. And this is, you know, just echoes of a tired, old, outdated story of health.
And that is the next barrier that we have to overcome in the search for longevity, is looking, how do we understand how to keep ourselves healthy over the long term? And that's not something that the medical system has ever really thought about. That wasn't really in their remit. And the truth is that it's probably not going to be created by a medical system. It's going to be created mainly by patients, and patients being inspired by content, by providers, by each other.
According to a study by Paul Marston from the University of Sussex called Mimetics and Social Contagions, Marston suggests that when faced with a variety of different options, our decision-making ability is to simply go, oh, what is everyone else doing? Great, I'll do that too. And so because of this, we blindly follow the rules from generations past. But the problem is, the world is changing faster than these rules are changing. But today, things change so fast that the rules from our parents, the rules from our society, the rules from our religion often no longer apply.
For me, the future of longevity is about keeping that ancient wisdom going, but using the best bits of modern science to enhance it. That's where we've gone wrong.
We're mistaking what works in a more advanced medical model for what can work for health and optimal health in a different population.
We've got modern medicine getting into conditions that really it doesn't need to get involved with. We should let it concentrate on the stuff that has been life-saving, that has helped increase life expectancies.
We've progressed a lot, but we still know so little about what is it that makes us, and whether or not we do really own our body, you know, or it's someone else or something else that's actually running us.
We think that we've created some kind of answer to longevity, but truly it's in indigenous cultures that we see longevity without all these fancy pharmaceuticals and different kind of manipulations to get there. They're living simply, but they're living for a long time.
And truly the things that keep you out of the doctor's office, and that really is the fountain of youth, secret to life, they're not sexy. They're nothing that science is ever going to show us as new. They're the basic things that our ancestors have taught us through the years, and really what we've lost in Western society.
In the spring of 2017, we traveled around the world to find out what we can learn from those who appear to be aging successfully without chronic disease.
There are these pockets of people that are supporting each other, that know each other's families, that have each other's backs.
They're intimately involved with the plants. They're intimately involved with each other. When someone is stressed, when someone's having a challenge, they all band together, they help each other. They laugh a lot, they have fun, they know how to, they don't take life too seriously. All these things are important.
Health just seems to happen to these folks in a very natural way. They live in communities, they're in relationships with people. They don't stress out about small things.
My guess would be they're not so attached to being on iPhones and iPads and computers. My guess would be they're not on Facebook trying to prove, defend, get their needs met. And they have a much deeper feeling of acceptance from themselves and everyone that's around them.
They don't think about health. Health is the default option for them by virtue of the way that they choose to live their lives.
Sí, sí le gusta, pues, pero veo una vueltilla, ya volvería, ya andando un ratito, no, ya yo me siento bien. Pero cuando voy allá a la finquita que tenemos, agarro un machete y ando trozando matones ahí.
non bisticciare mai, sempre andare d'accordo nelle cose sul lavoro e su tutte le cose. Pace, lavoro e giustizia.
Quanti anni tieni? 105 anni. Sono giovane. Mi sembra giovane.
Si sente.
Non lo so neanche io.
Pura vida es sentirse uno bien. Pues es pura vida es sentirse bien en todo, no tener problemas, no tener nada. Y eso es pura vida. Me siento pura vida.
What are all of these people doing? They're all living very similar lifestyles. And what they're doing is they're living on this planet the way we evolved to live on this planet.
Io conosco solo i cibi naturali. Anche ora, se potessi, mangerei solo quello che prenderei io in campagna e mangerei il pane buono che non esiste più. Niente supermercado.
Tanto los niños como los viejos consumen un 90% de frutas. Todas las épocas hay frutas. Ahorita tenemos mangos, guayabas, marañones. Y qué rico un fresco de marañón. Mi señora licúa mango tierno, mango sazón, lo licúa y ese fresco es riquísimo. Cuando hay mucho mango maduro, también le quita la cáscara y la pulpa y lo licúa, otro fresco riquísimo. Aquí, por lo general, no tomamos esos embotellados, solo comida fresco natural.
L'elettricità non c'era dappertutto, c'era solo nei grossi centri. Nei piccoli paesi c'era la candela, il lume, e quindi tramontare a letto.
No pienso en nada, nada que lo que ando haciendo. No, la mente no está alcanzando cosas de más allá, ¿no? Está en lo que está.
Un chiquito, pequeñito, lo llevamos al mar, a bañarse al mar, porque así no sufría de resfríos. Y por el yodo del mar y qué sé yo, todo ese cuento. Y así nosotros no tuvimos esos prejuicios de que las bacterias, ahora sí tenemos exceso de bacterias, porque ahora hay un montón de contaminación. Pero en aquella época no vivíamos eso.
Ma i giovani non lavorano oggi come prima. Prima facevamo un lavoro pesante e camminavamo a piedi, ora si cammina in macchina, ora diventati tutti, sono nati in macchina, sono nati a cavallo, sono nati a sedia, diciamo, ma allora erano nati in mezzo alla povera, per dire, hanno sacrificato le nostre mamme per sollevare i bambini, le famiglie.
Γιατί δεν υπήρχαν αυτοκίνητα, δεν υπήρχαν δρόμοι. Εγώ έφευγα όταν ήμουν μικρός από εδώ και πήγα στον Άγιο Κύρικο με τα πόδια για να πάρω το πλοίο να πάω στον Πειραιά. Περπατούσα, ας πούμε, αυτά τα 35.
Io auguro sempre di obbedire all'anziano che ha preso una certa esperienza e già sa dove mettere le mani e non lasciarsi assassinare da nessuno. Lui deve governare se stesso, praticare con gente, per esempio, buona, perché il proverbio dice chi va con zoppo impara a zoppicare.
As humans, we require connection. That's a huge part of our experience, is connecting with other people, feeling like we have a sense of belonging. Even a person in jail would rather be surrounded by rapists and murderers than being in solitary confinement by themselves. So that tells you the power of community and the power of connecting with other people, as a human experience. And that person would rather be surrounded by people that are ready to kill them than they would, to be by themselves.
There was a study recently where they found that loneliness caused more death than smoking or obesity. Loneliness.
Μου λέει πέρσι πέρασε ένας φίλος του το πρωί να πιούν καφέ. Περνάει ο δεύτερος και βλέπει το αμάξι του αλουνού. Σου λέει καφέ πίνει. Κατέβηκε κι αυτός από κάτω. Περνάει ο πέμπτος, περνάει ο έκτος. Μου λέει ήπιαμε 70 κιλά κρασί. Τη μέρα μπήκε κανένα στη δουλειά. Για καφέ. εκεί πιάνει 70 κιλά κρασί. Αυτός είναι ο καριώτης.
だから今このアメリカの人はやっぱり寂しいと思う。個人を大事にしたがゆえにやはりこれが孤独につながってやしないかって。だから薬を飲んだりとかして、自分を癒すという気持ちで飲んでるかもしれない。これ癒しにはならないんじゃないかなと思うし、だから個人が大切ということは重要ではあるけれども、でも一人では人間は生きていけないから、そこにちょっと目を向けてほしいなと。特にアメリカ人はそうだとしたら、薬よりももっとやっぱり同じ人間としてやはり人と人とのつながりを考えていったらどうかなと思う。
Somehow we've all lost our way and become more disconnected from the bigger houses we have with bigger walls, from watching TV to all of these things. We've lost our way, we've lost our connection, but inside we have this deep yearning for it. And sometimes we just need our hands holding to remind us where we really want to be, and get over those fears of reconnecting again, because the world's actually a lot safer than we think. People are a lot less scary than we think.
Αυτό το βρήκαμε έθιμο παλιά από τους προγόνους μας. Τότε ήταν και ωραία πανηγύρια, γιατί δεν ήταν αυτή η πολυκοσμία. Το κάναμε και για λόγους οικονομίας. Αυτά τα χρήματα που μαζεύαμε τα διαθέταμε για το χωριό. Και όλα τα πανηγύρια που γίνονται για ακόμα για αυτό το σκοπό. Βέβαια. Και γλεντάμε κιόλα. Βλέπουμε ανθρώπους από άλλα χωριά, γίνεται μία... Πηγαίνω, γιατί σας είπα πιο μπροστά που είχα παρέα, που είχα στην ηλικία μου ανθρώπους. Τώρα οι περισσότεροι είναι νέοι. Έχω λίγους να συναντήσω, θα πούμε. Και πάω πάλι.
Panayidis brought a sense of authenticity that I've probably never seen when it comes to community. It was amazing to see everybody come together from the ages of 5 to 95 and share a space and share community and share food. Everybody would participate in making food during the day, and then at night everybody would sit down with their meal and their wine and their ouzo and just enjoy each other's company. The band would play all night long, and they would rarely take a break. The dancing circle that would form would contain dozens or hundreds of people arm in arm. When one person would leave, another person would join, and the circle just wouldn't die. These people were partying all night long until the wee hours of the next day. It was amazing to see the collective community come together and just have a good time, spend time together. Everybody just seemed to look forward to this time of celebration, of laughter, of joy, and it really was a gift to experience such an authentic form of community.
I mean, here's the thing. We are social beings. We need each other. And when we have community, when we have friends, when we have people that hold space for us, we tend to perform better. We tend to enjoy life more.
The most elusive, but perhaps the most powerful ingredient in meaningful life change and healing is readiness. I believe that there is, for each of us, a point of readiness where we can begin to understand our own personal history and integrate all of the shadow elements, all of the stones we don't want to turn over, all of the skeletons in our closet, and embrace that as a part of, perhaps even a necessary part of how we have become who we now love ourselves to be.
We all live in a world that's getting faster and faster. Time is starting to speed up, and unless you learn how to stop time, you are going to be in trouble. And so one of the tried and true ways of doing this that's non-denominational, you don't have to change your name, you don't have to go to the Himalayas, any of that stuff, is just to learn how to monitor your breath and slow your breath and bring your attention to the focusing on this in-breath and this out-breath. It's one of the core principles of meditation, and it really is about taking your attention and focusing it on some internal node, some internal nexus of control that is really tied to everything, right? Like you stop breathing, you're dead. And so, I mean, it is real. It's not abstract. You're not thinking about the stock market. You're not thinking about the future. You are just focusing on this nourishing breath that's keeping you alive. And you know what? 10 breaths, 20 breaths, whatever it takes. It's like anything else. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you develop that skill, then you're home. And then you operate from this place, looking outward, coming from a place of balance, instead of looking for something out there in the world to fix the problems that you have because you're a hungry ghost. And so bringing it inward and focusing in on yourself first then allows you to have a much more holistic view of what the world is about when you're not needy.
You know, I hear so often people say, I can't meditate. That's a lie. Stop lying to yourself. Everyone can meditate. And it doesn't have to be something where it's like super sacred, go to an ashram. It can be as simple as the moment your eyes pop open, you decide that you're going to listen to yourself first, that you're going to tune into yourself, and that you're going to connect to that higher resonance. Whether you want to call it God, the universe, you know, whatever you want to call it, you can call it any name that you want. But if the more you're connected to that, the better health you're going to have, because you are now in complete harmony with yourself. You're resonating completely on that frequency. And this is why, you know, so many people can't put their finger on why they have so much energy after they meditate. Why is it things change so profoundly? And it's because you're now resonating with complete alignment in who you were meant to be in this world. It's in Sanskrit called buddhi. It's when that moment when you feel most like yourself. This is something that's been, you know, recognized in a lot of these cultures where they have these mind-body practices. Maybe they have priests, maybe they have medicine women, maybe they have medicine men, maybe they have a temple that they visit, but you know, something that unifies all of them is a practice and a routine and a ritual. If we can bring it back to that place of, you know, what do I need to really move into that space of feeling most like myself and to connect to that higher power? For some people, yeah, meditation. For some people, it's prayer. Other people, you know, they're walking a stone path in a garden with just their thoughts to get into that mindfulness place. Whatever it is for you, if you're denying that part of your body, you'll never truly heal yourself.
So meditation, I think, is no longer a luxury. It's no longer like a pedicure for your brain. It's actually the single most important piece of mental hygiene that we need to be practicing, not only for our individual health, but for the health of the collective. Because the reality is we are social creatures. We feel each other. Mirror neurons are real. And so if you walk into a room stressed, that has an impact on everyone around you. But if you walk into a room rested, present, blissful, that also has an impact on everyone around you. And so I know that meditation can sometimes seem selfish, like I don't have time, my kids need me, my boss needs me, but I think that meditation is the least selfish thing that you can do, because as you heal yourself, you help to heal the collective.
And gradually, over time and with practice, we are able to focus more on the present, more on our mantra, more on our breathing. And there's something that's very special about that practice. People who start doing that start building greater purpose.
And when you have an alignment with your mission and your purpose, and you have an alignment with the environment around you, you make energy, and that energy becomes willpower. That energy becomes thoughts, that energy becomes feelings, and that energy becomes action. Or that energy could just become watching TV all day long. And if that's where you're going, you will suddenly make less energy. And when you make less energy, you don't make it as well, you start to get old.
Τον καιρό που έπρεπε να σταματήσω να πάω να γυρίσεις, να πίνεις, να γλεντάς με γυναίκες, πέρασε λοιπόν. Τώρα είναι το μόνο που με ευχαριστά.
Δεν σταμάτησα ποτέ να εργάζομαι, να περπατώ, να οδηγώ αυτοκίνητο, να κάνω ταξίδια μεγάλα, να βοηθώ κόσμο.
Hanusimi. Watashi no wa. Kenko de aru no ga hanusimi de aru sa.
When we first met Hideko, we were amazed. She's the epitome of healthy aging, and her ability to interact with her environment through gardening and walking 2 or 3 kilometers to her friend's house to read the paper without any glasses and to function in a way that I've never seen before in a 97-year-old. And every morning she would have a routine of getting up and walking to the gate and opening the gate, grabbing the newspaper and coming back. You could tell that her routine was important to her garden was important to her, and these were the things that she lived for. Her daughter was telling us about how she would climb orange trees at 95 by herself. Her love for working in the garden and her ability to till up her soil and cut down sugarcane really blew us away and showed us what's possible at the age of 97 and really gave us an idea for a template of longevity or healthy aging. Even to this day, she still defies what you think she might be capable of. Her willingness to engage her environment is pretty remarkable at the age of 97.
Health is a willingness to engage life, and what it takes to fully engage life is the bravery to do the things that you love to do in life, and then life becomes a labor of love, and a labor of love is sustainable.
To me, we do ourselves a disservice when we think that our purpose has to be this grandiose thing where we're feeding every single hungry person in the world, give clean water to everybody in the world. All these things that oftentimes make us feel significant, at least make us think that we'll feel significant. But when we're just trying to think in those glorified terms, I think we need to check ourselves. The wise philosopher Ice Cube once said, we better check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. So that grandiosity vision, that might not actually be our real search for purpose. It might be us compensating for our unresolved pain, where our unresolved pain essentially boils down to a feeling of I'm insignificant. So then we create these grand visions that are engineered to make us escape our sense of insignificance that we're still not resolving. It's like, okay, now I'll be significant if I win 7 Tour de France's and make this amount of money, and I'll just say that I'm helping this number of people, but I really get all that recognition. To me, true purpose has nothing to do with getting noticed, nor does it have anything to do with avoiding getting noticed. I think the noticing is just a complete byproduct. But how do we know when we're connecting with our purpose? I think we feel filled up from it.
So a big question is, what is a big life? Richard Branson lives a big life, and actually I really admire that kind of big life. He's always out there, you know. He is like the poster child for living the big life. I'll tell you another person who lives a big life, a custodian we met at Mott Children's Hospital. He's a custodian who follows the kids who are dying of cancer, maybe. And these kids, some of them never have their parents come to visit because they're too busy or disengaged for some reason. And I spent a fair amount of time in this hospital with our daughter, and I would notice this custodian would stop at children who never had parents coming in and would read them children's stories. And it makes me emotional just thinking about this. But you talk to that custodian and they'll say, I'm part of the medical team. And the medical team knows that too. So this person plays a very important role. That person has a very big life. And I get kind of emotional thinking about that, because what it makes you understand is that you can have a deep purpose. You can craft a purpose out of just about anything and turn it into something of great meaning.
So when I was a long time ago a hospice nurse, I used to go and help people transition to the next phase of life through death. And one of the most amazing deaths that I helped, and she remained happy through the entire thing as she transitioned, was an alcoholic woman. And her spiritual connection was the 12-step program. And I realized that it didn't matter what your spiritual connection was. It could be that you're Mormon, or you're a Seventh-day Adventist, or you're Catholic, or you're Muslim, or you're Jewish, of any of these spiritual traditions, or even not a religion. But if you had that, you died well. You didn't die with fear. because you had enough self-awareness about who you are, what you're here for, and what you were here to accomplish, and kind of where you stand as you're leaving.
Feeling like you're part of this great whole, that you belong to the universe, that you have a right to be here, and that there is a divine and sacred purpose for your life is a critical part, I think, of really being truly healthy. So whatever you choose to believe is up to you, but believing that you're part of this and that you're here for reasons, I think is really important.
When we're not connected to something greater than ourselves, maybe we never get disconnected, but our awareness about it kind of bleeps out for a while. I think suffering ensues. Zen people would say all suffering is caused by a sense of separation. So when we don't have awareness of our connection to something greater than ourselves, we get stressed, we get unnerved, we feel all alone in this interesting miracle called life that ironically has more support for us than we can possibly recognize. So it might be a connection to Mother Nature. I think surfers are out there in a very spiritual practice that they don't call spiritual. They're connected to something much greater than themselves. This beautiful ocean, which is just one dimension of Mother Nature.
Well, I think surfers are, I would say being a surfer, I think our connection to spirituality is connected to the ocean and connected to our relationship with the ocean. And, you know, if the ocean doesn't make you spiritual, then I don't really know what can, what will. You know, if you want to talk on a science level, I mean, when you talk about spirit, you talk about breath. And then you talk about the ocean, you talk about holding your breath. You know, the relationship between air and breathing and water and drowning is pretty, you know, that's pretty intimate. And so, you know, I think there's a, you know, I always believe that there's a physical manifestation of a spiritual or emotional concept. And so there's some physical things that happen, but surfers' connection to the ocean, I think, is what really makes us spiritual.
The real question is, where do you want to spend your days? Who do you want to spend them with? Are you living the life you should be living, and are you making an impact, and what's your legacy? And then once you're on that passion and that desire to continue to serve drives you to want to still be here and want to serve and want to be a part of this goodness that you're spreading on the planet. And then absolutely use the technology, use the hacks, use all these things to keep the ship sailing in that direction. But without that bearing that is going to drive and dictate where the ship is going, that's like being a ghost ship, right? You're just wandering aimlessly in the sea for what?
I think when we're pursuing this journey of longevity, we have to find something to live for. We have to find our purpose, and our purpose might be to find our purpose. That might be our initial purpose. Otherwise, I think the pursuit of longevity is just a fancy way of saying, I'm scared of death.
If we were taught death and life is this beautiful story here on earth, the natural cycles, we would just the same not have as much fear and or shame around what death represents to us.
Δεν σκέφτηκα ποτέ μου το θάνατο. Αυτός δεν τον αποφεύγω με τίποτα. Και το Θεό μπάρβα να έχω. Άμα θα έρθει η ώρα μου, σκέφτομαι μόνο τι δουλειές θα κάνω.
Are we running from death, or are we chasing health? And this to me is a pivotal and imperative question to answer. I do not think that death is an avoidable tragedy. And that's how we treat it in the West. We treat death like it's an avoidable tragedy. But if we're looking at longevity as a means by which to optimize our life, to optimize our health, to start living more in accordance with nature, then this seems like a very worthwhile pursuit.
I don't think longevity in and of itself is a core value. Quality of life is a core value. And that has many elements, one of which is health.
It's really easy to rack up a score and say, look, I lived till this number. But what does that mean? Empty years are empty years. right? And so were they filled with passion? Were they filled with time with family and loved ones? What was your purpose? What were you doing? Did you enjoy the sunshine? Did you move around like you wanted to? And so these types of things are way more important than this idea of longevity, just extending life for just that reason.
Our primary focus instead of longevity should be happiness, because that happiness is the key to longevity versus the opposite. Living longer won't make you happy, but being happy will allow you to live longer.
The goal really in our life, when you look at everything we try to accomplish, is to try to be like a child. You just try to be completely satisfied in your life. Know that your needs are going to be met. Have complete confidence in who you are. Be in love with who you are, what you look like, not wanting to change a thing. Look in the mirror and just enjoy yourself. Children do that. We're always trying to get back to that state of a child. When we get back to the state of a child, now that youthful glow, that joy, that laughter, that energy that attracts us to human anyway, is now all culminated within our body, and that truly is what propels us into longevity.
So that was the philosophical underpinning of what I'm going to talk about today. So hopefully we can ground this now into actionable items, things that you guys can do to actually implement some of that philosophy, those ideas. And really, the way I like to frame this is through the context of lifestyle medicine, which really is the only medicine that empowers you truly to take back your health. It's the only type of medicine that is free. It's the only type of medicine that is sustainable. So once we can start to own our health and look at it through lifestyle, that's when we gain immense power in the process. So working as an integrative practitioner, I was working with people with chronic disease, autoimmune conditions, cancers, digestive issues, skin problems, you name it, hormonal issues. And in that process, we did a lot of lab testing, functional lab testing, the metabolomics and microbiota and amazing stuff, hormones. And you can gain a lot of knowledge and wisdom from this type of testing. And you can take direct action to resolve and to work with the disease or dysfunctions or imbalances going on in the body. But in that process, what I realized working with a lot of people was that there was a fundamental aspect that was missing from still the way a lot of people practice medicine or health, which is the fact that they're not even dealing with health. Right? They're treating the disease, they're working with the disease, they're managing disease, which is, and it's a very valuable method and tool. But we also have to teach health. This is something that's new. These people that you heard that were all funny as hell, right? I mean, what an amazing sense of humor they have. They didn't have to learn this stuff in any other way than what do my parents do and how are we living our life in a normal way. We live a life now that is so disconnected that we have to relearn how to be healthy. And it's something that we just weren't taught, a lot of us. So this is what I was teaching so many of my clients, how to live healthy in this crazy modern world that we now live in, and along with the disease management aspect of things. So we have to recognize there's a key concept of rebuilding health versus resolving or treating disease. So these are some of the people that you saw. The guy in the upper right is Julio, 105, can still ride a bike, still cognitively there. His hearing is going. So this is one of those things. We're interviewing people that are in their 90s and beyond 100, and they're deteriorating. This is a part of it, right? So we have this vision of making it to 100 like we're so robust and healthy, when the reality is we do break down. And so part of the process of aging is that we have to learn to appreciate where we're at. We have to appreciate 30 and 60 and 80. Right, as this process. And so, I know in the West, in the US, we're not supposed to ask, particularly women, how old they are, right? But think about what's underlying that. It's the shame about getting old. And so part of making it to 100 in a healthy way does involve being proud of your age and realizing that there's something beneficial that you can not only learn at that age, but also give back and contribute with your wisdom, right? So all of these people had no shame around how old they were. It was just like, I'm 91. Well, I don't know. God just keeps me here, right? Like they didn't even think about it. They just enjoy it. So, Blue Zones has done amazing work, National Geographic, Dan Buettner, with some of this longevity stuff. Here are the 9 things that they identified when they went around the world to the same places that we did. Moving naturally, downshifting, 80% rule, plant slant, know your purpose, spiritual belonging, family first, right tribe, and wine at 5 p.m. So this is pure correlation that they're identifying. And they're trying to use their best ability to identify healthy habits. But I actually disagree with every single one of these, both from a clinical perspective as well as what is actually happening in these places. What is downshift? Kind of slowing down. So, this is, part of this is marketing, right? Plant slant, right? So they're trying to get these things that are, that we can remember. But really what I identified when we look at what's really going on, and you heard some of it this morning, right? Consistent and lifelong movement, right? They don't exercise. There is no leisure in their world. They don't have that. They just move as a part of their life. So we need to think about this in a different way. When we're getting to our 70s and 80s and 90s where moving is becoming a little more difficult, this is exactly what we need to do, right? Whether it's in Okinawa, we saw in the old folks home that we visited, they're doing these little chair movements, right, with their arms. And really this is cognitive therapy, right? They're working on their neuromusculoskeletal system, right? Their brain-body connection. So we're training brain, we're training movement. This is a very critical aspect, even when we get into these ages where we can't do the things that we once did. But consistently moving throughout life, because let's face it, all movement is natural. Can anybody name an unnatural movement? Of course not. Everything we do is natural. We just have to engage with our environment in a more constructive way and continue to do so on a regular basis. Instead of downshifting, we are the most downshifted society that's ever existed. We don't do anything, right? We sit all day long. But the problem is that we have too much stimulation, right? One of my favorite quotes from one of the gentlemen, I think he was in Ikaria, he said, when I was young, the body was busy and the mind was still. The problem I see now is that the mind is busy and the body is still, right? How eloquent and perfect is that statement? It's exactly what we're facing today. So we don't need to downshift. We just need to reduce stimulation. We're constantly being pinged with emails and texts and Facebook and Instagram and this constant stimulation, TV and sound. Go outside in a city and it's just nonstop, right? You go to New York City. Anybody live in New York or from New York City? Right? The energy there, it's wild, right? But here's the other interesting part about New York City. You probably walk more in New York City than you do in maybe even a place like Burlington, right? Because it's part of the environment. So it's very interesting when you look at the environmental impacts on your behavior and the way you interact. So we need to reduce stimulation as much as we can because we're not moving enough. 80% rule. It's a valuable method to not overeat, and certainly that does play a role, but really I think the key that we're realizing now from science is intermittent fasting. This idea of eating in a window that's sort of natural, that your grandparents ate in, right? They would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then they'd stop, right? We're snacking all day, we're eating late at night, we're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So giving your body a break from digestion, I think, is a primary thing that is more important, and actually what we've done in a lot of these cultures as well. So they did more intermittent fasting, sometimes unintentionally, whether it was food shortages in the village, whether it was a horrible season in terms of weather. There was this intermittent fasting that was going on constantly. The plant slant, completely outdated idea, right? Yes, we do need lots of plants, very, very important. But there are plenty of people around the planet that eat more meats and organ meats and do other things than just eat plants. So this shifting towards plants, not necessarily the fundamental factor, especially if it's not organic, it's coming from crappy soil, et cetera, right? Which we all know here. So really it's more about eating local. What grows around you? Are you eating foods that are pretty natural to your environment? Trying to do that more and more as much as you can. Organic, of course, but is it grown in good soil? Because organic, as Dave mentioned, doesn't really mean a lot anymore. It needs to come from a soil that has the immune system, or that has the challenges that result in a plant immune system. In other words, the polyphenols, the phytochemicals, all these compounds that protect the plant, that we can then borrow right? So when we eat these plants that are robust, that have been challenged by nature, whether it be the organisms, the sunlight, the temperatures, the pressures, whatever it is, the altitudes, those are the things that confer beneficial compounds in the plants that we then borrow, and our system then gets this crazy stressor from the plant, and then we upregulate various mechanisms in the body to become more resilient, right? So we need better soil, and then of course on time, eating at the right times of day. This goes back thousands of years in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and all around the planet. They knew when to eat and what to eat at various times, and of course this varies by the season. So that's an important factor as well. Know your purpose. This idea of purpose is, I just don't like it, mostly because our society creates this construct around purpose, right? And this idea of big purpose. Well, these people that we studied in Okinawa and Ikaria, they didn't have a huge purpose for their life, but they did have meaning. They had meaning everywhere, right? Meaning is a choice. So you can infuse meaning into everything. Now, something that may have a purpose can bring with it meaning, but this doesn't mean that you have to do anything big in your life. You just have to have meaning, real meaning, not social media likes and bank account meaning and these things that we value in our society. So we've got to shift our meaning a little bit. But having this purpose, I think, brings with it a connotation that I don't know is truly valuable in our society. A sense of connection. This is what we're lacking so badly in the US and the West. Connection to ourselves, connection to God, to spirit, to the creator, to the universe, whatever you want to call it. Creator to the thing that's bigger than you. Connection to the earth, right? Very, very important right now. Connection to each other, of course. Connection to plants, connection to animals, right? Just connection, connecting to something. We need more of this, not this projected connection that we get through social media and the internet these days. Got to get outside, right? This is not mentioned in the Blue Zones list, which is kind of funny, but of course they're outside. It's almost so obvious that they didn't mention it. They probably didn't even think of it. But the thing that we don't do now is go outside. So this is something we got to re-engage with, simply going outside. Synchronizing with nature, right? The rhythms of nature, the timing of nature. This is the light cycle. This is the moon cycles for you women out there. This is the ultradian rhythms that happen during the day. Your brain is on constant cycles. There's so many cycles going on. And this is something that they naturally integrated with. There was nothing to speed up in these people's lives. You couldn't. There was no electricity for most of their life. You operated with the seasons, with the day. So getting back in touch with that nature's rhythms. And probably the most important is to embrace simplicity. Most of our problems in the West have been created because we've created this complex lifestyle for ourselves that then requires more complexity to resolve the problems. So we just simplify our lives, simplify our diet, simplify our relationships, simplify our calendars, simplify the products we're using in our homes, simplify everything in your life. All of a sudden you start to realize there's more time in the day, right? You have more time in your life. So one of the most important lessons I learned was when we were in Costa Rica and we were working, right? We had a limited time, limited budget. We're trying to find these 100-year-olds. There's not like a list of these people, You can't email them, We had to have translators knocking on doors. So we're stressed, ideally, right? In sort of the traditional sense. And yet, time felt like it completely stopped when we were in Costa Rica. This was not a vacation, in other words. Now, you go on vacation to Costa Rica, yeah, it feels like time stops. But we were very much engaged with work and technology and all this stuff, and yet it felt like the day was forever. It's because the environment around us dictated the flow, right? If you go walking around the lake, that's normal. Go walking down the freeway or the highway, all of a sudden it doesn't belong, doesn't match, right? So the pace at which you operate is dictated a lot by your environment. So again, the New York City example is a very good one because everybody can sort of imagine if you've never been or if you've just seen any TV, you see how fast it is, right? So you have to operate with that or you're going to be sort of left out in the cold. So the environment really does dictate this. So this was something that they didn't have to engage with, but now we have to consciously influence, our environment and where we're at. So these are the 21st century health challenges, just a few. There's more, but these are the ones that I traditionally work with the clients that I work with and what I see typically. You guys are probably all familiar with this, and I loved this morning's talk when she said that convenience was basically not saving time, saving movement. It's 100% correct. I've never heard anybody say that, and I love it because convenience is one of the worst things that we value in our society. We don't save anything, actually, in my mind. We're actually just causing more problems. We're just creating more imbalance with this idea of convenience. How many people flew here? A couple people, okay. Next time you're in the airport, watch. Well, we all do this, so you can watch yourself if you want. How many of us take the escalator instead of the stairs? Even down. It's hilarious. And we might have a bag, okay, but pick up your bag and walk up the stairs. Pick up the bag, walk down the stairs. There's no time difference, right? It's just movement. So these are the things that we now have to consciously do, I think. When you go to the grocery store, park in the back where there's no cars. Really quick parking spot, and you walk an extra 15, 20, 30, 50 steps, whatever it is, right? Start to engage with your environment in a different way because convenience is causing so many illnesses. And then the last one is perverted life meaning. We need to really re-engage with what it means to be alive, why we're here. And when we can do that, all of a sudden, we find that there's this subconscious pattern that emerges that creates a longer life because we have a meaning. We have a purpose to be here. We have a reason to be here. We don't have reason to be here subconsciously. We're just going to sort of self-destruct, right, and create diseases. And this is what the science is actually showing. This is not just philosophical nonsense. We know that this actually does filter down to the biological level at the cell. So here are the aspects I want to talk about today: addressing the holobiont, psychospiritual trauma, circadian rhythm disruption and poor sleep, lack of natural light, and then how to optimize health. So we'll break down a few of these big ones, and then talk about some ways that you can induce health into your life. So addressing the holobiont. May not have heard this term. Holobiont just means that we have all these organisms that basically make up who we are. If I ask you who you are and you tell me you're a human, are you sure? Yeah. You have more bacterial and microbial genes and material in you than you do human. Right? So who's carrying out most of the function? It's not you, or maybe it is. Who are you? Who am I? Right? We have not only our host genome, which is inside our cells, right, the somatic genes that we all think about. We also have mitochondria, these little organelles that operate inside our cells that carry out a lot of function, really, really important. And I believe Dr. Ted talks after this about mitochondria in an effective way. They have their own genes that are not you. They're not you, but they kind of are, but they're not, right? So they're operating, and they're communicating with your genes. Then you have the microbes in your gut, in your brain, in your blood. They're everywhere, on your skin. They have their own genes. They're communicating with you, whoever you are, right? And then you have the outside world, microbes all around us. When you eat food, there's microRNA and other genes in the food. So we have all these genes talking to each other. So we have to address all of them. You can't just look at the human. You got to look at all the other genomes and ask yourself, what am I doing, thinking, feeling, and behaving? How are these things impacting the health of these systems and the interaction? And it gets really, really complex very, very quickly. So anybody that tries to reduce longevity or health down to one system or one idea, whether it's food or exercise or anything, it's nonsense. It's everything. Everything affects everything. So we have to at least understand this concept that everything affects everything. That way, when I know that I'm destroying the environment, I'm actually destroying myself. Right? When I think negative thoughts or self-limiting thoughts or anything like that, that's actually affecting my microbes and my genes and my mitochondria and everything, right? So these all factor in. So at least we have to understand this conceptual idea that everything matters, right? It's not just one thing. So there's a lot of talk about red wine and how it improves health and all this stuff. Well, we're starting to learn more mechanisms of how that actually happens. There's nothing magical necessarily in the red wine, and you may not get the benefits of red wine if you don't have the microbiota that can metabolize the things in the red wine that then produce communication molecules to the rest of your body. So this is sort of an easy diagram to sort of view this through. The polyphenols, right, the compounds in the red wine get metabolized, digested, if you will, by the bacteria in the gut, and then it carries out all these functions, right? Modulations of various enzymes, all these epigenetic factors that we talk about are carried through because you have the microbes in your gut. If you didn't have the microbes in the gut, the polyphenols and the ethanol and some of the other things in the red wine probably wouldn't do anything. Or if they did, they certainly wouldn't carry out the benefits that we know red wine to be healthy for. So we have to recognize that it's not the polyphenols necessarily, it's the metabolizing of the polyphenols. So here's a good visual description of this, right? We have microbiota, and we're learning more and more about this. We're scratching the surface of really what's possible here. But we know that the microbiota in your gut produce things like nitric oxide, hydrogen sulfide, short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, these type of things that then communicate to the mitochondria, which carry out the energy function in the cell, right? If you know a lot about the new science of cancer, you know that mitochondria and the function of mitochondria is really important in terms of the cellular energetics and how genes are expressed. So now we know that the microbes are talking to the mitochondria, the microbes are talking directly to your nucleus, the mitochondria talk to your nucleus, and they're all communicating in a three-way operation. So all of a sudden it becomes really important that the microbes in your gut are robust, are healthy, and that they're being fed the right things. So here's even more nuance to this. And again, this is a little sciencey, but for those who kind of like to geek out on this stuff, it's just kind of cool to see that you have pathogenic bacteria, you have commensal bacteria that are friendly, and these are all playing a role in how our cellular function is being carried out. So we have to think about the holobiont, all the systems in our biology that dictate our health. Psychospiritual trauma, huge one. This is probably, when I was working with clients, the #1 factor that was underlying chronic disease, autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc., was psychospiritual trauma, mental emotional trauma, however you want to define it. It is underneath all of this stuff. It's a program operating in the background that some of us aren't even aware of. Most of us aren't even aware of. That we think is us, but it's really not us. And it's dictating the function of our nervous system, it's dictating the function of our cells and the gene expression, dictating so many things. And one of the most important pieces of wisdom that I could share with my clients was to be grateful for your symptoms. It's a really hard concept at first, because the last thing you want to do is be grateful for the thing that's causing you so much misery and trauma and pain and suffering. But once you recognize that is the impetus for change, then you start to recognize the benefits of it. It is the thing that's driving you to become more harmonious with yourself, more harmonious with others, more harmonious with the environment. It is the thing that's doing it. If you didn't have that thorn in your side, you wouldn't make the change. You'd still be eating the same nonsense. You'd still be poisoning the environment. You'd still be yelling at so-and-so, treating people like crap, hating yourself, etc. But because of those imbalances, because of those things that are not healthy, they create symptoms in the body or the mind that then allow us to see that there's something off. And if we can step into that and recognize that, then we can shift it. But if we keep pushing it away, saying it's not mine, get it away, I don't want it, then we're never going to own the healing process. So this is a really, really important aspect of these symptoms that we face. Adverse childhood experiences. Anybody heard of the ACEs study? Ah, good, wonderful. This is a fantastic study. It was carried out by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. And they originally started off as a weight loss study, I believe. And there was a certain number of people that didn't finish the program. So they wanted to figure out, why are all these people not following through? We're giving them the tools. And what they realized is that the behavior of these participants was guided by these adverse childhood events. And this is a very gray area. How do you identify an adverse childhood event, right? I mean, there's potentially millions of adverse childhood events. But so they selected a handful that they could be confident were problematic, right? Parents divorcing, mental and emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, these type of things, right? And there's lots of them, having an alcoholic parent, a parent incarcerated, whatever it was, adoption, there's lots of these things, neglect. And what they found was that the more adverse childhood events that somebody experienced in childhood, the more disease was created in adulthood. And this is a fascinating study that has some really profound implications. So out of 100 American adults, 33% reported no ACEs, okay? So if they didn't have an ACE, that means 1 in 16 of them smoked. If people reported 1 to 3, all of a sudden 1 in 9 smokes, and then between 4 and 8, 1 in 6 smokes. Now some of this you could explain, this is behavior, right? Of course, they're gonna make these poor choices. But they also looked at people that didn't have poor behavior. They didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't do drugs, and they still had higher rates of autoimmune conditions, higher rates of obesity, higher rates of heart disease, etc. And this wasn't small things, right? I mean, the one with IV drugs, I mean, that's huge, right? But look at the suicides. 1 in 96 attempts suicide, When you get 4 to 8 ACEs, 1 in 5. Right? So there's a massive impact on the biology, on the physiology in the body, and it doesn't have to always look like a disease. It can look like depression. You know, it can look like mild symptoms that we all sort of carry, chronic aches and pains, right? So you don't necessarily have to define these things. What we realize is that this is changing the neurophysiology. It's changing the way your nervous system functions. Instead of being in a parasympathetic state where you can rest and regenerate and recover, you're constantly in the stressed out mode because this world is not safe, right? You're living in a constant state of fear at the nervous system level, at the cellular level. And if you get into Bruce Lipton's work and Joe Dispenza's work and Greg Braden's work, there's a lot of people out there talking about this stuff on a scientific level, how our thoughts and emotions carry out in actual biology. So it's absolutely critical if you want to resolve cancer, if you want to resolve autoimmune disease, that you at least explore the ideas of emotional trauma and developmental trauma that happen when we're young. So there was a great study conducted on Holocaust survivors and their children. So their children had increased levels of stress, and they didn't suffer from the Holocaust, right? So this stuff is even getting passed down. And there's studies that show in mice up to 7 generations that are getting passed down. One of the most famous studies involves mice that were going through a maze, and I don't think they involved a maze. They used a scent, I believe lavender, or cherry blossom maybe. And when they had the scent, they would electrocute them. So they would shock them, right? And it was mild, but still enough of a stimulus. And then the mice had pups. And the pups were never electrocuted, but they would give them the same scent. All of a sudden, their nervous system spiked. So this is getting passed down. Now, this is brilliant biology, right? Of course, that's it. I mean, life is amazing at this. Right? Your parents are passing down information to you so that you stay safe. It's brilliant. But if we look at traumas, then all of a sudden, this is not a real danger. And so we have to resolve this stuff. So otherwise, our nervous system is going to function in a way that is not coherent with health. And I truly believe this is the ultimate definition of healing. It's the instantaneous, the real-time process of transforming pain into love. So what we need is more love at the cellular level, more love at the mind-brain level, more love at the physical level. It is the act of transforming the pain into love. That's it. That's all it is. So we can make it complicated, or we can simply accept that premise. And the more healing I see, the more I believe this to be absolute truth. Circadian rhythm. This is a huge one, and I think more and more people are becoming familiar with this. I see some blue blockers. We got blue blockers being given out. This is critical. And one of my favorite, this is actually from a study, Circadian Metabolism in the Light of Evolution. Evolution has installed in us a powerful internal clock programmed to anticipate physiological events based on a battery of entrainment cues, including light, temperature, food, and physical activity. Unfortunately, the infrastructure of today's society and our lifestyle choices have thrown a wrench in our biological clockwork. Simple concepts that we need to engage with, right? This idea that light and temperature and food and exercise dictate everything about your biology. We have clock genes, period genes. These are guided by light cycle cues and food cues and exercise cues. So genes at the cellular level, all around your body, your liver, your thyroid, your digestive tract, everything is being guided by the light, primarily, by the circadian rhythm. So we have to abide by this, right? Or else, we see a lot of people getting up in the middle of the night to urinate, right? Part of that reason is because the hormones that are naturally produced to shut down the production of urine aren't operating properly. So if we can fix circadian rhythm, all of a sudden, this comes back online and we're sleeping through the night. I had a client that had low testosterone, 29-year-old, he was an athlete. And we fixed his circadian rhythm, got him sleeping, got him exposed to sun. His testosterone shot up, in a matter of 2 months, shot up like 300%. So he didn't need testosterone. His body was plenty capable. It just was off time. So this is a really important aspect to our biology. So if we look at the history of lighting, right? All the way up until basically 1893 when Tesla lit up the World's Fair, we were operating on more natural methods of fire, essentially, right? And the people that we spoke with in the film, until 1960, 1970, without electricity for the most part. So since then, everything's shifted. In fact, we probably have people in this room that remember a time when they were using fire and candlelight for the most part, you know, and even when we were using light bulbs, they were the incandescent kind, right, that actually gave out heat, you know, infrared light. That was more beneficial than the stuff we have now, which is LED and completely devoid of the lighting spectrum that our biology is accustomed to, right? So if we look at daylight, you know, you can see the wavelengths of light, the UV and the infrared, the type of red that we can't even see. That's the natural spectrum. Incandescent, yeah, it's not so bad. Lots of infrared, not as much, you know, purple and UV light. But look at fluorescent. I mean, what a nightmare. You know, do we really expect our biology to learn that cue? You know, if everything in our system is guided by this light cycle, do we really expect our biology to be on time if we're using fluorescent light? Halogen, not so bad. You know, cool white LED, probably better than fluorescent, but look at that spike in the blue. That's going to send certain signals to our biology about what time of day it is. So we have to recognize that the type of lighting that we're using and that we're exposing ourselves to makes a huge difference, and it's not the same as it was 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. Right? So if you just look at the natural sunlight during the day and at night, you know, there's a massive shift in the temperature of the light. Right? And we all notice this. We just don't really think about it. But now we're seeing all of us, but particularly kids, staring at phones and computers late at night. Probably the most fundamental error that we're making when it comes to circadian rhythm is exposing ourselves to these artificial lights at night when we're only supposed to be seeing fire, the moon, and the stars. Right? That's what biology is used to. So there's a ton of science around this. You know, in 2017, a Nobel Prize was given to chronobiology, to a scientist that looked at chronobiology, the idea that circadian rhythm is guiding biology. So it affects, you know, the sunlight enters our eye, okay? The eye transmits that signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, right? That then talks to the hypothalamus part of the brain and the pituitary. Pituitary guides all these hormones, right? So whatever organ is an issue for you as deemed by your doctor may just be operating in a way that your environment is set up. So you may not have a thyroid problem, may not have a liver problem or a kidney problem. It may just be dysfunctional, or rather out of balance based on the cues that it's getting from the environment. So we need to fix this anytime we have an issue. Anytime we have a health issue, circadian rhythm must come into play. So when people would walk in with autoimmune diseases or cancers or digestive issues, doesn't matter. We would get this in line. This has to be done first, or at least up front. This has to be worked into the program because the body has to get on time. And you see this even now with cancer treatments. You know, they're using circadian biology to time medications. This has been used in Chinese medicine forever, Ayurveda, same thing. So we need to get back to this idea that the body has timing. And if we can harmonize with that, then we can start to gain a massive advantage. So another example of when hormones peak during the day, right? You have testosterone, adiponectin, insulin. They all have these peaks throughout the day, right? And we notice this with cortisol rhythms, right? A lot of us are familiar with that, and melatonin. But it's the same with every hormone. So hormones are probably the biggest lever when it comes to the driver of our physiology, our health at the cellular level. It's hormones. Anybody ever been on hormone replacement therapy in a good way that's been done correctly can tell you it'll lift them out of all kinds of crazy symptoms. Hormones are really, really powerful. So if we can get this right and get our hormones operating correctly, we can make huge headway. And this is another example. Don't worry about all the technicalities here. The real key to understanding this is circadian rhythm disruption promotes lung tumorigenesis. In other words, just by altering the rhythm of your body, you can get lung cancer, right? I mean, it doesn't even seem like it makes sense, but it makes plenty of sense when you think about the circadian clock and it's tied to metabolism at the cellular level. So if your circadian clock's on point, it's on time, your metabolism's operating correctly, the energetics at the cellular level, you don't get this tumor response, this cancer-causing function at that level. So when we have cancer, this is absolutely critical to unwind that imbalance. So it's a part of every disease process, and it's a part of our health. circadian gene transcription. I love this study because what we're really looking at here is the black bar is 9 a.m., as you can see up in the top left. And the gray bar is noon, and the white bar is 3 p.m. So when we look at the thyroid, at 9 a.m., 458 thyroid-related gene transcripts turn on. They express. And 557 turn off. So that's pretty amazing. You have 1,000 gene transcripts being regulated by the time of day. You know, at noon, you have only 48 turning on and 2 turn off. So if you've got a thyroid issue, circadian rhythm, huge, right? So it's dictating genetic expression in the way all of your organ systems function. So here's the world we live in, right? It's quite beautiful, really, but also very scary. Here's a study and the percentage of population with 7+ hours of sleep. And the dark areas are the ones with 7 or more hours of sleep. The light areas get less sleep as a percentage. When you overlay them, pretty amazing, right? And my favorite one is Nevada, right, which is here. And the whole state basically looks like crap when it comes to sleep, and it's only because of Vegas, right? Because everybody's up all night and partying in Vegas, and that's where most of the population lives, right? So it throws off the whole state, right? But it shows you very clearly how light is impacting our sleep, right? So there's the other side of this, which is the lack of natural light, right? Something that we got to fix our nighttime lighting environment, but we also get more light during the day. So there's a lot of studies out there, and this is a huge one that people have a hard time believing at first until they're familiar with these concepts, that we're basically getting obese because we're not getting natural light. You know? We're seeing it in our children. A lot of other studies. More sunlight, less likely to need glasses, right? Myopia, Parkinson's disease, psoriasis, joint symptoms, skin. This is my problem. My health issues right here. Skin and joint problems. So we all suffer from a lot of conditions, and simply getting out in the sun can be a great solution for a lot of this. Leukemia, sunlight, vitamin D. We're all familiar with vitamin D at this point, but it goes so much further than vitamin D, right?
What part of your body for how long and how often?
As naked as you can, for as long as you can, without getting burned. So imagine if you were a primal human, right? You got a loincloth on and that's about it. You'd be walking around, well, you're light-skinned. You would probably be living in Northern Europe, these type of climates, right? So the lighting environment in the climate that is tied to your heritage makes sense on a seasonal basis, right? In other words, if you were outside in the winter, there's not a lot of UV exposure during the winter in northern climates, right? But then as spring comes, now you're starting to get more and more. Your skin adapts, you start making more melanin, et cetera, right? So it should be, now we're all over the planet, right? I live in San Diego, clearly my skin's not super well adapted to be outside all day in San Diego. But this is why we use shade. This is why we use clothing, right? And umbrellas and these type of things. So we can use these techniques and tools in an intelligent way, but trying to get outside in the winter, trying to get outside in the spring, in the summer and the fall. So by the time summer rolls around, you've already been exposed to winter sun and now spring sun, and now the harshness of the summer sun isn't going to just completely destroy you like it would when we're normally inside all year, and then we decide to go out for Memorial Day, drink 1 million beers and party on a boat, right? It's like no wonder we're getting sunburned, right? No wonder we're having problems because we're not integrating the sun all year round. So as much as you can without getting burned is the easy rule. And so that's your sort of gauge, right? And part of this, actually, and I'll get to it in a little bit, has to do with the rest of your health. How well you can produce melanin, how well you can produce some of these protective aspects, and actually we'll get into it right now. So
just to let you, there are apps that you can put in your latitude and longitude and your heritage, and it will tell you to go out between this time and this time for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Wow.
yeah, there's.
I don't know the name, but I can do this for you. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yep.
What is it called?
Yeah, it's called D-Minder. I have that app. It's a fantastic app. It tells you how much vitamin D you produce and all these things. But again, and I do thank you for that recommendation, but I also want, there's an important lesson here, which is to become familiar with your own biology, right? We need to get to know ourselves. How long does it take me to burn, right? What time of year? We need to start studying ourselves in context of our environment too. So I think these are great tools, and start to get familiar with things yourself too. So this is an important concept. We have different aspects of the light that penetrate our skin at different layers. Okay, now without getting too wrapped up in the science, the reason this matters is because we have different components in the layers of skin that determine biology and determine our function. Okay, so we look at the hormones that are related to light. So to produce hormones requires UV and infrared light primarily, but it also incorporates all the other aspects of light as well. So when we look at amino acids that have this little benzene ring, this little ring up at the top that actually captures light, they're the things that are making T3 and T4, the thyroid hormones, the melanin, right? The thing that makes your skin tan, right? We know this because we can see it, but the thing that's happening with melanin is happening with a lot of other hormones as well, right? Dopamine, noradrenaline, adrenaline, the things that make us happy or that slow us down, they're all being guided by the light. So if you want to sleep well at night, you need light during the day, right, to make melanin and melatonin as well. So you can see serotonin, right, critical hormone, neurotransmitter for us. We need light to make serotonin and to make melatonin. So these are critical aspects that we need to recognize. Parts of our biology that we're starting to test for, the answers are partially going outside and just getting natural light. Cholesterol, right? We've all heard about cholesterol and how it was the devil for a while. Now it's starting to become okay again, thank God. Cholesterol is not a bad thing, right? But it interacts with red, infrared, and UV light to make our sex hormones, cortisol, right? The availability to make these hormones comes from us getting outside and exposing our skin and our eyes to this light. Another aspect of light that we need to pay attention to is Wi-Fi and all these EMFs, right? These cell signals and all these things that we're doing. So just like the visible light spectrum can affect our skin, the non-visible aspects of light, which are EMF, right? EMF is just another word for light. We can't see them, but they're still impacting us, right? There's no way around it. And now 5G, and I'm sure Nicholas will get up there and talk a lot about this, huge, huge issue right now. And I hope to God that this doesn't get implemented because it's a big, big problem. So pay attention to this. Again, I'll let Nick expand on this stuff because he'll geek out more than I can. But it's a huge issue that we're starting to see play a role in this health equation. So I don't like to leave everything as theory. I want to give you some tools to ground this stuff in reality. But it's also important to recognize this fact. It's very well stated. The reality is that you're not going to get health from anywhere. Okay? Health is innate. Health is within you. You create health. It's there already. All we're doing is getting in the way, and all doctors should be doing is help guiding you back on the path, right? There are stopgaps, there are crutches, there are Band-Aids that we can use, absolutely critical, right? Crutches are very, very important if you break a leg, but you don't want to spend the rest of your life on crutches because the leg will never actually heal and get strong again, right? You have to discard the crutches at some point and start walking on that leg again, right? Really where we need doctors in the medical industry to go is to help guide us back on track, right? To give that sort of crutch to us in whatever way we need, and also to teach us how to be healthy again. So it's critical that we understand that health comes from within. I'm going to give you a couple interesting aspects of the science. Some of you may think it's all nonsense, and that's okay. But hopefully you can at least just listen and maybe take it in, because some of this stuff gets pretty damn weird when you really look at it. Meditation. There's a lot of aspects to meditation that are helpful. We're now looking at the biophoton release at the cellular level of people who meditate. And we lose less light, put it that way, when we meditate, when we slow things down. And without getting too deep into the science, it has probably to do with mitochondrial function and the rate at which we're metabolizing things at the cellular level. We're not losing as much energy, essentially. So the point of this is to show you that science is looking at this stuff at the cellular level. And what we know experientially and through thousands of years of teachings by many cultures, we're now validating scientifically. So meditating is a critical aspect to resolving any disease, partially because it's slowing us down. Right? Again, this is the idea of that we have too much stimulus. We need to reduce stimulus by closing our eyes, focusing on our breath, just slowing down, stop all this kind of craziness, and induce more of this slowing down process at the biological level. Intention, absolutely critical. Now, this has been studied by actual journals, right? Intention is defined as a directed thought to perform a determined action. Thoughts targeted to an end can affect inanimate objects and practically all living things, from unicellular organisms to human beings. The emission of light particles, biophotons, seems to be the mechanism through which an intention produces its effect. So having an intention to heal, deciding that this is what's happening, not going to happen, right? If we have an intention that I'm going to heal, then it's going to constantly remain in the future, right? But if I'm healing, I am healed, right? These are the types of things that we need to engage with. And you can call it nonsense, you can call it pseudoscience, but this is very, very real, this idea of intention and its impact on your health. Something called the Maharishi effect. Anybody heard of the Maharishi effect? Cool, I love it. So this is widely regarded as nonsense by a lot of people, and that's okay. Partially because we don't really know how all this works. But this has been conducted at least 13 times. And the idea is that you have a bunch of people meditate, right? Imagine we were meditating in this room for hours on end about love and compassion and forgiveness and peace and empathy and all these amazing qualities, that a certain number of people can actually affect the whole. And so they've done this with thousands of people, and they noticed that the crime rate reduced globally, right? So you start to see these effects, and you're like, well, what's happening? HeartMath is actually doing this as well. They have the Global Coherence Project, I believe is what they're calling it, but they're measuring the coherence, the heart rate variability and all kinds of things around the planet. And it turns out that by monitoring that, they actually noticed that there was a huge spike prior to 9/11. So somehow humans were sort of anticipating the event, psychically, if you will. It gets really weird. This stuff is crazy. But again, this has been done a multitude of times, and we come up with the same effects. That somehow the intention of a group of people focused on something good can impact the whole, right? So again, it's really, really bizarre, but improved international relations in these areas. This is the percent reduction in international conflicts based on the sort of Maharishi effect. So I only point to this to illustrate the fact that there's some weird stuff going on in the sort of quantum field, if you will, in a way that we don't quite know how it works yet. But if we can just open our minds to the idea that our mind is insanely powerful, and the decision to heal, the intention to heal, can not only heal us, but can heal others as well. And again, here's Orestes with that quote. When I was young, the body was busy and the mind was still. The problem today is the mind is busy and the body is still. So a lot of this has to do with just slowing down as well. Restoring circadian rhythm. Here are the very simple to-do list to restore circadian rhythm. And if you do this on a daily basis for a period of a few weeks, I'm confident that you're going to notice drastic changes to the way you sleep. And whenever you change the way you sleep and you move that in the right direction, everything heals. Starts to heal, moves in the right direction. May not be the only thing you need, but it is where we heal, is in this period of sleep, right? We break things down during the day. Sleep is where we recover, where we rest, where we heal. So this is fundamental to heal, is improving the circadian rhythm and the quality aspect of sleep, not merely the hours. So getting the light cycle dialed in is of critical importance. Can I move on? Okay. See a couple people writing. If anybody needs it, I'll send it to you later. Intermittent fasting. If you've never done this, it's very, very simple. 12 hours of food, 12 hours no food. Breakfast at 8, dinner at 8. You know, making it a smaller window is even better. 8 hours of eating, 16 hours no food. Right? And you want to be eating in distinct meals, not eating all day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, whatever it is for you, confining that to a short window, giving your body, your digestive system a break. And then occasionally, if you can do this, well, you can all do this. If you choose to do this, a 24-hour fast. It's not that hard. It sounds awful, but it's not that bad. You know, you have dinner on Friday at 6 p.m., and then Saturday, you don't eat until 6 p.m. You're going to go hungry. You're going to go, oh, this sucks. This is awful. I'm so hungry. You know, your blood sugar might dip. There's logical consequences, but your body becomes adapted to this idea. It starts to go, oh, crap, we got no food. We got to figure out something here, right? We're going to have to mobilize some sugar. So you start to optimize the processes at the cellular level. So engaging a 24-hour fast, and if you can, you start to get used to this, doing a 3-day fast or a 5-day fast, you know, perhaps with medical supervision depending on your condition. But these are things that we've been doing for thousands of years across many, many cultures. And they are of critical importance for many cultures to engage this type of fasting activity. So it's cheap, right? You'll open up tons of time during the day, which is really weird. You start to get bored. You're like, oh, I can't have food, right? So you start to find new hours in the day. And it's interesting to see how addicted you are to food. Just the crunch or the taste. And you might be eating amazingly healthy food, but when you realize that you take food away and you're like, oh man, like I miss that taste. I miss chewing something. I miss swallowing something. It's quite amazing just to notice these things. So engaging in intermittent fasting or fasting technique is extremely valuable, and you're noticing this with cancer and a lot of other techniques as well, or a lot of other diseases as well, is being very, very effective at resolving these metabolic issues. So trauma, this is a tough one. A lot of times when we have developmental traumas, birth traumas, and traumas in our childhood that we may not even remember because they were so traumatic, we may have to have a few techniques to resolve some of these things. But these are probably some of the most effective tools that I've seen. And usually you want to engage with a practitioner or somebody that can help you with this, especially the somatic experiences. A lot of these traumas can end up literally in the body, held in the body. So there's a lot of techniques to get rid of some of this stuff, but it is critical when you have traumas to at least start to engage that process. And it may take a little while, but the profound benefits are so worth it when you start to get rid of some of these underlying traumas. Shinrin Yoku, okay, this is basically forest bathing, right? Which is I think it's funny that we've sort of focused on forest bathing, but you can go out to the beach, you can go out to the park, you can go anywhere outside in nature. And this has been studied. It actually changes your neurophysiology, your brain waves, you know, your neurotransmitters. Everything starts to shift when we get out in nature. This seems to be sort of home for us. So just engaging with nature is a simple technique to heal. Sauna therapy. Anybody use saunas on a regular basis? I love it. So critical these days, not only for the heat shock proteins and the amazing metabolic and cellular effects, but for detoxification, right? It gets rid of glyphosates and heavy metals and plastics and all this crap that we have in our system. Sweating is one of the most effective ways to do this, and do it in a parasympathetic way, right? Exercise, very, very critical, and sweating that way is great, but that's a sympathetic sweat. Parasympathetic sweating, where you're sort of resting and you're calm and you're relaxing, is also very important. So sauna therapy is not something that any of the longevity cultures that we visited ever did, but it's something that we probably should engage with today because we have all these excess toxins in our world. Cold thermogenesis. I bet you there's not as many people that do this one. Oh, we got a few. I love it. So this is a really, really good way this actually improves parasympathetic tone, the ability of the parasympathetic to operate properly. And so you have cold shock proteins, you turn white fat into brown fat, which is more metabolically active. There's a lot of benefits with the cold. Also, it engages the breath. Whenever you get into a cold bath or a shower, the first thing you do, right? Right? You just like immediately breathe, and then we hold, right? We freeze. But the idea is to engage the breath. It allows you to engage the breath in a really, really beneficial way. Wim Hof has sort of made this popular recently, but the Swedes and the Russians and crazy Russians, they've been doing this for forever, right? So this is a very, very effective way. And it doesn't mean sitting in an ice bath necessarily. You can go in the shower and you can go hot, right? And then kind of wash yourself and go cold for 15 seconds and like get paralyzed, right? And then go back to hot and then go back to cold. And then as you start doing this, you can get 30 seconds in the cold, a minute in the cold, 2 minutes in the cold, then you can move to cold baths. What's really crazy is that you find that when people start doing this, they actually get addicted to it. They love the feeling. It upregulates all kinds of beneficial hormones, starts to balance things better, you have more energy, you feel alive. I mean, it's wild. Your sleep improves. So it's awful at first, right? In fact, I know there's people in this room going, screw that. He's nuts. There's no chance I'm doing this, right? And that's totally okay. But engaging with the cold is something, most of the people in this room are pretty light-skinned, come from a place where there was a lot of cold in your heritage. This is something that we've lost touch with, is the cold. So getting back in touch with that is a very, very good tool. Last few things, dance, play, create, express. You know, these flow states, we are missing this in our culture. If you looked at all the old people in the interviews, they were basically playing, right? They're laughing, they're joking. Any spiritual guru that you listen to, I gauge spirituality by how much they joke and play, right? How jovial they feel, right? It doesn't have to be this overt, you know, sort of comedic act, but just the smile, the lightness in their heart, right? This is critical. So we need more dance, we need more play. And art therapy, there's people that have healed pretty insane diseases just by painting, right? Because they're expressing themselves. They're getting lost in something they do. They're getting something out of their system. So it's wild how this stuff works. And again, we don't have science that proves anything on this. We just have people that have done this and have seen amazing results. So this is kind of the longevity equation. It's actually the title of my new book, which is coming out next year. But essentially, the longevity equation that I've identified is essentially the resiliency at birth. Okay, this is important. You know that barrel that Beth Lambert showed with that when you drip all these things in and it can overflow? Well, we all start out with a different size barrel, right? So some of us have a small barrel, some of us have a big barrel. And you see people, I'm sure you have friends that can eat anything, do whatever they want, they don't have any problems, right? No known diseases or illnesses or whatever. And then you even look at gluten and your body like freaks out, right? So we all have different barrels, right? So the resiliency at birth, the ability for you to withstand this environment at birth is a factor. And we just have to recognize that wherever we're at, that's what we're working with. It doesn't mean that we can't last a long time. It just means that that's where we're at. We don't have as much play. But where we can add resiliency is in this idea of hormetic stress, right? Exercising, sunlight, plant chemicals, what else? Fasting. These hot and cold, these things are excellent up to a certain point. You do too much exercise, becomes harmful, right? You do too much sun, becomes harmful. Don't do enough, you're not getting any benefit. So this idea, this perfect balance of stress that we need. And so we can, and by doing that, we actually become stronger, right? Anybody that's ever lifted weights or run or whatever it is athletically, you push yourself and then you recover. Now you can push harder and you recover, right? That's how people get stronger, they get bigger, they get faster, whatever it is. It's the same idea with any type of hormetic stress. Plant polyphenols and these chemicals are stressors on the body. They're making us more resilient at the cellular level. So we can add hormetic stress to make ourselves more resilient. But then it's our ability to repair, right? This is where sleep comes in and slowing down, engaging the parasympathetic. The ability to recover and regenerate is a part of that process. And then minus biological distress, right? So reducing the drops in the barrel, reducing all the biological stressors that are creating problems for us, right? These are the traumas, the chemicals. You could argue actually chemicals might even be a hormetic stress, right? They're actually, in fact, we know this about some chemicals. They're actually creating a beneficial aspect in the tiniest amounts. Some are extremely toxic in small amounts, so I don't really like to get into all that, but the reality is they are probably hormetic as well. So reducing these biological distresses, increasing the resiliency, the hormetic stress and resiliency there, and improving our ability to repair. Those are the things that are going to actually equate to a longer, healthier life. But at the end of the day, it's really not about the number of years that you live, right? We really have to get back to now. That's all there ever is, right? Just a series of nows. So if you're not happy now, then what are we talking about, right? So it's about recognizing that no matter what strategy you use for longevity, for optimal health, for all this stuff, you know, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? So really appreciating where you're at today. And ironically, by doing that, that contributes to being healthy and happy, right? So we can't lose sight of really what's important, which is the operation in the moment, right? And, you know, to get more esoteric, it's really about losing the self. You know, and the more we can lose of this thing that we call the self, this personality, this I-ness, right? Then and start to see that we all are connected. There is no separation. And this personality that I call me is really the thing that if we can just let go of a little bit, then that's ultimately what causes a lot of healing in the body. And this is something that they've known in a lot of practices around the world. So just recognizing the fact that there's something bigger happening, and this idea of me isn't the most important thing. So that's all I got. Thank you so much, guys. Hopefully, time is over.